For these samples, I've just prepared 2 pieces of stretch with a stitching line 3/4 of an inch from the edge. For the straight stretch stitch, start by adjusting the stitches on the Bernina so the indicator on the bottom knob needs to be on the red. For a straight stitch, the zigzag is on 0 and the length about a 2 or 3. And then on the top here, you can see that the light on the left is on, which indicates that we're doing stretch stitches, and the stitch number here is 0. So here's the straight stretch. You can see when I pull on the seam, it doesn't pop. This is useful if you have a seam that you need to press open when you're finished. The zig base is not actually a stretch stitch, so I'm going to put it back to the regular green light, which will make my indicator happen over here. And then I'm going to make my stitch width as wide as possible and my length actually fairly short. The zig base is obviously used for basting, which means that we think the stitch is going to come back out again. My original stitching line is right on this edge of the zig so that the entire stitch is happening in the seam allowance. The feather stitch is another stretch stitch. Again, you want the width as wide as possible. The length can be back down to a 2 or 3. On this machine, the feather stitch is the number 2 on the stretch side. And the feather stitch goes straight on this side and into the seam allowance here, so I have to put my fabric through backwards. Here's the feather stitch, and there's my stitching line. I use this stitch for most stretch because it's very secure, but it's also easy to take apart because you can just cut the threads on the extension here.